it should be next to your, there you go, you got it. Okay,
Okay,
so let me
awesome.
hit, got it here, okay.
Okay, so we are starting our meeting here for vulnerability, addressing vulnerability of the mind, body, and spirits. Today I have on here Miss Julissa. She is my mentor, spiritual healer, and owner of Sacred Heart. And then Simone Sylvester, mental health specialist. She's here to give us insight on mental health and how that affects vulnerability. And Julissa will be addressing the spirituality side of vulnerability and lack thereof. And my name is Whitney Milton. I'm a registered nurse and owner and creator of Ancestral Missions. And I'm going to be addressing the medical part of it. Excuse the background noise, I'm outside here. So vulnerability, when I think about it, and what made me actually want to do this video was that I had just like a not good relationship with vulnerability. I didn't, believe in it. I felt like it was a weakness, it wasn't necessarily needed in my life. So that put up a mask and made me wear a mask in my relationships with a lot of people, my relationships with work, in my marriage, around my family. It was just a lot of different masks that I was wearing. And as I came to realize, I wasn't being my authentic self, and coming into my authentic self, a lot of things started to break away, as far as my marriage and looking into spirituality, a lot of things came into alignment that made me want to do this video. So I reached out to some people and here we are. So, so to get an understanding of vulnerability, I feel as though, and you ladies, if you want to chime in, like vulnerability is standing up for yourself, whether, you're emotional, not being apologetic about who you are, not fearing being courageous, not fearing fear of, people seeing you or rejecting you, and just owning who you are.
Yes, it's all about, yes, vulnerability to me is, it's all about self-expression, right? It's about allowing yourself to be completely open, to be raw, to be exposed without having that fear of judgment from others, right? Because that's one thing that I think with vulnerability we fear most are people's reaction to us, the judgments, the criticism, right? And but we stand our ground, right? To stand up for ourselves, right? We have to own in on that worthiness, that comes from that self-love within us. And just knowing how empowered and how beautiful and that we are created of love. And I think once we know that, once we own in on that self-love, it empowers us to become more vulnerable, first with ourselves.
Right. Yes. Right. Just to be okay with who we are and who likes us, that's great. And who doesn't, that's okay too, So, yeah. So addressing vulnerability and how it actually affects us physically, when you're always on the go or trying to keep up this facade, there's a stress behind that, and there's a lot of ways that stress plays on the body. And that may show up as, swelling in the body, or, anxiety also, where it increases your heart rate, blood pressure, and it puts, just a strain on the body. And just doing that, putting strain on your body just to keep up a facade that, can't be kept up, can only be kept up for so long, is a lot. It's a lot. So I think just paying attention to that, standing in your own and owning who you are, you alleviate a lot of things, because everything comes back to self. It always comes back to who you are, and are you owning who you are?
Yes, and it breaks down the body also, right, Whitney? Because when I was experiencing the worst of vulnerability, of being raw, it was very hard for me to express my feelings because I was so afraid of the judgment, right? And that breaks you down. It completely it breaks the body down, right?
Yes.
Because all those emotions, all those feelings that we withhold within ourselves, that we
Mhm.
repress, it manifests, right? It has nowhere to go in the body. The energy can't flow the way it needs to.
Absolutely.
So it
Yes.
manifests in,
Mhm.
in, in our physical
Yes.
body.
And it may show up as sickness, like I said, inflammation,
Yes.
a lot of things occur within the body. And I know for me, with going through the issues that I went through, with my marriage and different things like that, I became very sick, lost a lot of weight, um, but slowly, like I said, just addressing that vulnerability and actually sitting in it, letting myself actually feel what I needed to feel, not suppressing it or anything like that, is the best thing, because you have to feel those feelings. If it's not addressed, it's not going to go anywhere. You want to overlook it or whatnot, but it's always there, and it's going to come back up because it just stacks.
Hmm.
It continues to stack until, a pressure cooker.
Yes. Breaks
Yeah.
you down. We got nowhere to
Yes.
go
Yes.
but up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So as far as spirituality, how would you say that affects vulnerability, plays a part in our spirituality?
Yes, vulnerability plays a major role in spirituality, because when we're not vulnerable, we can create feelings of not belonging, feelings of
Mhm.
loneliness, right, of inadequacy.
Yes.
We also don't give ourselves a fair chance to build and create relationships with others, intimate relationships,
Hmm.
personal relationships, friendship and a relationship with the self, most
Yes.
importantly. Also, when we're not vulnerable, we're surrendering it's like we surrender our personal power, right? We're surrendering that power to fear, right? We're allowing fear to come in. And it also blocks us from love,
Yeah.
from self love, from being loved, from loving others and being lovable, right? It can bring out feelings of shame and feelings of guilt and not being protected.
Right.
And also, vulnerability can affect us not speaking up, like you said, right? Not speaking up for ourselves, not expressing our authenticity of who we are, expressing our feelings and our emotions. And it can also affect us in the sense that we are creating self-doubt, right? We're not trusting ourselves with ourselves.
Hmm.
We're not trusting others. We're not allowing um, that trust to come in. And we're not trusting in our higher power, in our higher self, right? We're
Right.
not trusting in ourselves, right? And like I always I see vulnerability in having three aspects, three faces to it. The first one is vulnerability with ourselves. We have to be honest and raw with ourselves first. We have to know what our needs are, what our emotions are, what our feelings. We need to know that first within ourselves
Yes.
without criticizing ourselves, because we can be our biggest critics,
Hmm.
right? So without the criticism, but coming into compassion and love of thyself to understand thyself. And
Yes.
then the other aspect I see it, vulnerability in the divine, invoking the divine, calling on to the divine to help us understand each other, being honest, telling the divine our needs, our feelings, our emotions, right? Who better than the divine? There is no judgment there. There's only pure love, which is what
Hmm.
we are, as we are an extension of the divine. And then the last aspect of it that I see is vulnerability with others. But in order to have that vulnerability with others and be who we are and show who we are and show up as we are, we need to first have that self-love, right? And we need to have divine's love, because they both just flow together. It's that 50-50 workmanship, that 50-50 connection.
Yes. Well, yeah, I agree. Allowing, you were saying about speaking up for ourselves and not speaking up, holding back or, just holding a lot of things in, that's what it comes down to, not standing up for yourself or whatever. But when we're vulnerable, and people see that authenticity in us, you know what I mean? And that individuality, it gives people the permission to be themselves, and then their masks start to come down. But it starts with us. It always comes to us. You know, so in reference to not speaking up for yourself, I know for me, we've done a lot of work together. And when you had me move that light throughout my body, I think I told you it was in my abdomen. And at the time, I didn't really know, you know, about chakras and stuff like that. You know, there was a blockage there. But also, I would see speaking to, you know, my spouse at the time and stuff like that, he would say, oh, you know, the lack of communication or whatever. Maybe our communication was just different. Now, you know, that's a possibility too, but with the throat chakra as well, you know what I mean? Communication comes from there. So does vulnerability and the lack of not speaking up, can it affect, you know, these different chakras?
Yes, because the chakras are not just individualized. They
Mhm,
flow together as well. So if one is off, another one can become off. Because
mhm,
let's say if our speaking capability, right, not being able to speak, you know, what and express ourselves, it can affect our personal power, which
mhm,
was affecting you at that time, which was your solar plexus. That's our personal power, you know, and our throat chakra, it can affect it as well, our personal power in order to speak up. And one thing that we can do with vulnerability, um, if we're fearing being vulnerable, we can ask questions to ourselves, right? Where am I feeling it? When I think of vulnerability, what does that mean to me? What is
mhm.
the fear behind it? Where am I feeling the fear in my body? You know, it's just closing your eyes and just allowing yourself to see and think about vulnerability and your emotion and just see where you're feeling it throughout
Where
your
that
body.
tension is.
Yes. And
Yeah.
you will feel it somewhere.
Mhm,
You will
mhm.
feel it somewhere. And it's just bringing that attention to where you're feeling it and
Yes.
breathing in that area, right? Bringing light and attention and awareness to that area. You know, so these are little practices that we can do with our own selves and
Mhm.
journal about it. You know, and if you know the area where you're feeling it and it's a specific chakra, you know, you can look up that chakra and see the meaning of it, right? And work with it, right? And bring healing to it. Because another important thing with vulnerability is bringing in self healing as well,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Yes.
And then go back to also, I think, you know, of where you were most vulnerable in your life, sometimes, you know, as a child or
Yes.
whatever. And then when you did not respond or felt like someone, you know, did not respond appropriately to you or that situation at that time, sometimes that vulnerability can get suppressed. I know for me, you know, I was a crier you know, as a child a lot. And it was just like, stop that crying, you know what I mean? Or, you know, or she cries a lot, you know, or that's just weakness, or that's weak, or, you know, whatever it may be. And I think, you know, growing up, people really don't realize, you know, how that affects children, or how it later affects, you know what I mean, people, because people are affected in different ways. But suppressing that for me, because it was just like, you know, and for women, period, we have this sense of being on all the time. You know, we have to look good, feel good, you know, run all the time. And I mean, that's not the case. Some days we have bad days. It's the truth. You know, everybody has bad days, you know, but being able to actually speak on that and to have someone, if you're with someone, to say it's okay not to be okay. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that that plays a big part in it too.
Yes.
Mhm.
And you're
Yeah.
correct. And yes, yes, Whitney, there's always a root, right?
Yes.
There's
Right.
always that core root that it goes back to. And it's important for us to go back there.
Mm-hmm.
It can be
Yes.
terrifying because it's not
Yes.
easy, right? All,
No.
all this self-work is not easy, but it's so worth it. And it's such a beautiful journey. And
Absolutely.
and it's a beautiful process. So it's always going back to the root. It's like taking the band-aid off and seeing what the cause is
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
going back and bringing healing to that so then we can have the willingness to begin to let that go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are our greatest teacher.
Absolutely. Everything that we need, we already have.
Everything.
Yeah, it's
Everything.
facts. Yes.
There's
Yes.
nothing outside of us that we don't know that's within us. Everything's within us.
Right. Okay, Mo or Simone, how can vulnerability affect our mental state? You know, how would that show up?
That can actually manifest in many, many ways. I was actually looking at this guy on TikTok, and he somehow figured out a way to pretty much draw and create all the things that he sees in his head because he's schizophrenic. And he pretty much was saying like how he went through a lot of things as a child, like he was abused and neglected, and a lot of that manifested into him having high anxiety and schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So honestly, being vulnerable does play a huge role in your mental health, and that's why I'm such a huge advocate on getting mental health treatment, because it is out there and it is available, and mental health is like nothing to play with. It's serious.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what would be, what is the most common cause of people not wanting to appear vulnerable, you know, from your experience when you deal with, you know, or maybe that gentleman that you're talking about, you know, if you're saying he's drawing all of these different things to, I guess, just from his trauma, is this his way of healing, you know, and putting himself out there?
I do think that is a great way for him to start that healing process. But like you said, a lot of people do see it as a sign of weakness. And like you said, nobody likes to be seen weak and vulnerable. Like, for some reason, we all have it in our mind, like if we appear to be weak, people are just automatically going to want to attack us. So we always got to be on the defense. And that's not necessarily true. Like if you find a good group of people, even like family around that you can be vulnerable with, it's good to be vulnerable and get out those feelings and emotions, because stress is also another player in different mental health illnesses.
Right. Yeah. So I guess what suggestions would you give to people that wish to change or become more vulnerable with themselves and people around them?
Honestly, it depends on where they are in their own journeys. And I think the first step is getting a mirror and looking at yourself and knowing your own self-worth. Right now, where I am in my journey, I do have a hard time with being vulnerable. So I do take extremely small steps, but you know, I'm just trying to do better than what I did yesterday. Honestly, you can start with journaling and reflecting and affirmations to your own self. And then you can slowly start like letting people in, like dropping little small hints like, oh, I'm feeling such and such kind of way, and then see how people react to it if you are having a hard time being vulnerable and showing your moments of weakness.
Yeah, I think also in the beginning, it's important to know, you know what I mean, who you can drop those small hints to, you know what I mean? Because you want to feel comfortable as well, and you don't want someone to take that as the wrong way, or to be rubbed the wrong way, I should say, you know what I mean? But yeah, like you said, journaling, meditation, yoga, getting out there, walking, you know, like you're doing now, you know, that decreases the stress as well. And it opens up, you know, just opens up your eyes to so many different things, and where you're able to connect with nature, connect with yourself. And then you're able to go out there and try to speak to someone else.
Right. And that's why I love working with kids, especially juveniles, because for some reason our medical field loves pushing so many medications. Like they love to drug these kids up. And these kids be knowing, like, listen, these kids, when they were on the outs, because I work with kids that are incarcerated, when they were on the outs, they would tell me like, oh, I was doing ecstasy, I was smoking weed, I was doing all these other drugs that I never even heard of. So they know what they're on, and they just like, I just want to be sober. So they asked me for like different things they can do to like help relieve stress.
Yeah, coping mechanisms. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of these kids, like, the medical field look at them like as suicidal, and they just don't know how to get out their feelings. But you guys aren't really doing much by like giving them drugs. Like we need to be able to, I guess, bridge the two fields together to not only make these kids, but also adults, aware of like other things they can do rather than medicate themselves.
Absolutely. I know at my children's school, like I'm really like I want something in place. They have like the Great American Teaching and stuff like that, but having something in place for these children, you know, because they don't know how to express their feelings or know, you know what I mean?
Right, because
What
this
to
is
say
a lot of these kids is like their first time feeling certain feelings and
Yes.
emotions, especially like
Yeah.
the kids that I work with. A lot of their mental health diagnosis, like a lot of these kids have been traumatized, they have been abused, they have been raped for the first time, and like when it happened one time and they go tell somebody, a lot of people don't believe them. So when it continues to happen, that's
And
when
that's
they
that
start
vulnerability that's
acting
overlooked.
out.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like all the signs and stuff is there, and it's just like we always overlook them.
Yeah, I think something, maybe implementing something within the school system or something like that for these kids to say, hey, I'm not okay. I think, Jalissa, I was telling you not too long ago, you know, just something like when you're on a blind date, you know, you have their specific restaurants, you order something that's totally not on the menu, but everybody in there knows that you need assistance. To have something like that in place in our school systems, you know, and to have, you know, to give the kids the help that they need, you know, because when they're vulnerable at such a young age, you know, and they need this assistance. And you're right, you know, the help is not there. And I think also the funding, it comes down to the funding, it comes down to, you know, having X amount of people in place as well. You know, there's not a lot of people in place for mental health, you know, to help support in mental health as well. But yeah, the medication, it's a lot, but you know, I think a whole system needs to be, you know, revamped, truly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because like you said, funding, but crazy thing is the funding is there.
It's there for at other places. Yes, I understand.
Right. They'd rather have it for the medication because that's what's paying them and killing these folks, unfortunately.
Oh, gracious. Well, I mean, do you have anything else to add? You know, in regards to how people can be proactive in their mental health, you know what I mean? Proactive in having a healthy mental state.
Well, there's a lot of things we could do. I would say first and foremost, the most expensive and probably my last option would be to seek a therapist.
Gracious. Oh,
Only because I just feel like no, like I know you have to have some kind of village out there. You have to have a circle of people that you can go and talk to and vent to. Those can always be your therapist. And if you don't, you need to go out there and you need to start building that village. Okay.
That network. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And if not, there's other things like you can come out, get your daily dose of vitamin D, increase your serotonin levels. You can go work out, meditate. I love stretching, a lot of yoga.
Right. I know for
small things.
For me, you know, it's showing gratitude as well. When you wake up, you know, the first thing, just giving appreciation for, you know what I mean? Just even the minute, the smallest things, you know what I mean? And that just changes, you know, your perception. That starts your day off right. You know what I mean? And then I look, when I have certain situations or whatever, I look at myself, I look at the things that I'm grateful for. And I'm like, does this really matter? You know, in the grand scheme of things, does this really matter? You know what I mean? And if it does, how can I change it? But does it affect how I'm, you know, blessed throughout my life? And usually no. But, you know, if it's a situation I have to address, you know what I mean? I'm going to put that effort in. But in the meantime, I'm still going to be grateful that I'm in a place to actually address that situation. Or I know someone that can help me, you know, get to where I need to be.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think, Jalissa?
Definitely gratitude, you know, being grateful, even when things seem so turbulent in our lives, we are also so very blessed, right? So definitely being grateful. My go-to is definitely meditation, is self-love, right? It's sitting and just quieting the mind and looking within, right? Seeing what's wrong, seeing how I can make things better, right? Seeing the truth of what's going on within my reality. Affirmations are powerful.
Yes.
Self-love books and self-guide books are amazing as well. Journaling, our feelings, our emotions is also very powerful. Yoga, Mama Earth, being out in nature under the trees, going by the beach, it's cleansing, it's grounding.
Yes.
So there are a lot of things that we can do. Also coming from the home, right? Instilling self-love to our children, right?
Mhm.
Teaching this from an early age,
Right.
having them affirm that they are loved and they're loved and they're lovable. I think it also it should come from an early age with our babies, with our children, and just teaching them, instilling the seed, right? Because a lot of the
Yes.
times they don't understand,
Mhm.
right? Even when they're teenagers, it's hard for them to grasp, the whole self-love thing. But it just instilling that seed, right? And just constantly saying how much they're loved. It's implanting that seed.
Right. Yeah. I think too, if you're in adulthood now, looking at it, from a point of when you just start asking questions, you know what I mean? When you start seeking the knowledge or start looking into it, things are going to just naturally come to you, and that comes from that seeker, that comes from seeking, ask and you shall receive. Like, and then that's facts, and that it may come to you in your sleep. However, something, there's like signs everywhere. But when you actually start questioning, your eyes, not physical, you know what I mean? It just starts coming together. It truly starts coming together. So, but yeah, I think
Yes. And faith.
everything's surrounded about around self. It,
Yes,
it really
it
is.
does. It is. It sounds cliche, the self love, but it's it's the main ingredient to life.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
faith and hope, right, in our Creator. Because when things seem at their worst, the Creator is with us, loving us, supporting us, watching over us. We're never alone in this world. Even when we feel the most loneliest, we're not alone.
Right.
We're not
Yes.
alone. Faith has been a major role in my life, major.
Yes.
And it's powerful. And just knowing that we are powerful beings. We are powerful beings. We give our power to no one. We are afraid of no one. No one is higher or beneath us. We are all created equal.
Right.
We're
Yes.
all
Yeah.
equal. We're all love.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashe. Well, ladies, I thank you for getting on here, for joining me. This was really helpful, for me too. And I felt like it needed to be out here for people to be able to, um, to see it, to understand, and to have from different perspectives, mind, body, and spirit, and soul connected, and how all of that is connected,
Right.
in the grand scheme of things. So, Miss Julissa, I thank you. And again, she's the owner of Sacred Heart. Her website is sacredheart.support. And she gives spiritual healing, and classes as well. Like I said, she's my mentor and she's awesome. She's great. um, and then Simone Sylvester here, the mental health specialist as well. I'm still waiting for you to do that podcast.
I
We'll put it out
know.
there.
Oh my
It's out
God.
there. It's out there in the
Trying to
universe.
start the office.
Okay, and then with me again, my name is Whitney Milson. I'm a registered nurse, holistic health and wellness coach, owner of Ancestral Missions, and I'm here to give support, to provide community wellness, physical health, and holistic wellness. Okay, I appreciate y'all. Thank you
Yes,
so
thank you.
much.
Thank you for having this, Whitney. Thank
Yes,
you for having me here. I appreciate you. Thank you, Simone.
Thank
Blessings.
you. Appreciate all your time.
Okay, yes.
yes. Bye.
Bye bye.